Crossings is a tool that we use to understand Christianity.
It's a lens, a way of understanding life.
A really dynamic, vibrant community. It began as typewritten pages being handed around a university.
All of my imperfections being smart for generosity.
It's become such a way of life for me.
It really is good, and it is something new.
I think I've probably known about Crossings at least since, I believe it was 1986 or 7. I was a co-pastor with my husband in Reno, Nevada, or in Carson City, Nevada, and we had Ed Trader come out for a weekend, and we were at Tahoe in somebody's nice cabin, and he did an entire weekend for our for members of the congregation, plus others from different congregations. I've been receiving the newsletter since then, maybe probably before as well. And then in 2009, it was a class anniversary for Seminex reunion, and I was asked to be one of the speakers. And as I worked through what I had to say, I realized how valuable my Seminex experience at time had been, and I also realized how old we're getting and that we're dying. So since Crossings is an annual event, I have since 2010, have come every single year, partly to reconnect with those people. The speakers are also wonderful, but what keeps me coming is reconnecting with these people who are so important in my life. I'm a hospice chaplain and also bereavement coordinator for our hospice. So I will have a total of 45 minutes to speak and allow for questions. So I'm hoping to shape it in a way that focuses in particular on the kinds of things that Crossings people are interested in. I find my background, I grew up in the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod, where I did hear the gospel. I went to a junior college, St. John's, Winfield, Kansas, where I had theology classes. Then I went through the deaconess program at Valpo, and then I have Seminex. So I was well grounded and trained in how to do law gospel theology. The Crossings method was developed as a way to help lay people understand some of the nuances of that and to become very particular about it. So I don't find it as useful because I have something that I've been using longer. But for me, I love to really sink into the text, and there's always by doing a close reading of the text, you see things. I ask questions of the text. For instance, when I was preaching most recently on blind Bartimaeus, Jesus comes into Jerusalem. He hears about him. He throws off his garment, which he probably used to collect money in, and keep close to him so he could pull the corners up if somebody comes along and tries to steal his money. He can't see them, of course. And he calls Jesus, in the Greek, it's Rabboni, and that is not a normal name for rabbi. And Mark uses the word rabbi in other places, but here he uses Rabboni, and the only other person who uses that is Mary Magdalene in the garden, who has a really intimate relationship with Jesus. And Bartimaeus then treks from Jericho up to Jerusalem, which was a really arduous thing. The poor guy hadn't gone far in his life because he couldn't see to go anywhere. But just kind of sinking into that text and noticing things, the whole sermon was there. So the goal is, what do you want your people to think, or to believe, or do at the end of the sermon? So where's this text headed? What is the problem that prevents them from reaching that goal? And then what is the means that will empower them to overcome the malady, or at least deal with the malady, so that they reach that goal? So it's basically law and gospel. The malady is the law, which comes either as judgment against you or prescription is what you should be doing. And then the gospel needs to be heard in a way that articulates the good news with language that speaks to the malady. So if you are feeling lonely and abandoned, the gospel word is, I will be with you always, or Emmanuel, God with you. If you are feeling enslaved and trapped, then you need to hear about Jesus, the Redeemer, who sets people free. So you shape the articulation of each of those so that there's a coherent understanding for folks. I have long thought that the gospel is a thin tradition within the Christian family. We all too easily get carried off to do the right thing, be righteous. And Crossings has been very faithful in terms of nurturing that thin tradition, of carrying, plumbing the depths of Martin Luther and Melanchthon in the Apology and the formative documents of the Lutheran Church. And I don't think that God or the gospel is dependent upon our efforts to keep it alive, but it's probably good for us to do the nurturing. And so providing funds for that, maybe scholarships or whatever, maybe even endowing something, it's good for us, but it's good for the church and the world as well.